Right, hello and welcome to the Panachecast. This is Panache Software's weekly podcast bringing you the latest news and events in the world of legal tech. This is episode 3, and in this week's show we're going to be covering the finalists of the Global Legal Hackathon, Alan and Overy's introduction of their Fuse-free cohort, and how legal departments are using software to streamline projects with outside counsel. But before we get into any of that, I'd like to welcome my co-host Neil Pemberton.
Thanks, Pete. Great to be back for another weekly episode of Panachecast. We've had lots of feedback this week. That's really great and important to us. Thank you for that. And thank you to everyone who spent the time to send us the feedback. It's really important. It's the best way for us to make improvements to the show, which is what we want to do. We want to keep it fresh and inviting for all of you. So please do send us any comments you have at panachecast@panachesoftware.com. This week we had some great feedback from Natasha. We will be commenting on that in future show, hopefully, but that was largely around social media and changes to advertising law and analytics in advertising. Lots of different comments on that. So we'll pick that up in the future show.
Yeah, definitely.
For you, Natasha. So thanks for that and for writing in. We have all of these shows are available across talking about social platform, lots of social media, lots of different platforms, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. If you just go to those and search for Panache Software, you will find it. It's the same name on all of those platforms.
Yeah, definitely. We've got our show, should be now up and running on the Apple Podcast app. It's available through Spotify, and it should be available via most other podcast providers. If you're looking for us and you can't find us somewhere, let us know and we'll get it uploaded there as well. Of course, you can always watch the video version of the podcast. That goes up to our YouTube channel. And importantly for us as well, we've got our Patreon page, which is patreon.com/Panache Software. Mm-hmm. As I say, we're aiming to make all of these shows we do free. So the Patreon page allows you to support us if you want to in doing this. It's, we're not only releasing this Panachecast series up there, we're also planning to offer some additional podcasts as well as things get going, looking at not only taking deeper dives into some of the legal tech areas, but also around general law and law and technology and things like that.
That's right, and there'll be skills training and lots of things going onto that page, which will be available to you if you become a patron. Yeah,
it's a great way to get in contact with us and potentially look to participate in the show as well. Anyway, on to the news. So what's up first?
Well, first up, we mentioned in week 1 about the Global Legal Hackathon. That was one of our events. The finalists for that have now been announced, and there are several, and they're from all over the world. Lots of different countries: Australia, Brazil, China, parts of Europe, loads of different places. We've had a look down the list, and we'll put. If you want to go and see who they are, you can have a look in the show notes. It'll all be uploaded there. But having spent a bit of time and read through what the firms are doing, it's not entirely clear to us what the companies are doing.
There's a couple of. I've got the document here with the blurbs from all of the various companies, and some of them are great. Others, you do have a little read through, and you think, I've read through all of this, and I'm still not entirely sure what the solution is they're providing. But
it's a hard challenge to break down what you're doing into 1 or 2 sentences. We've all been there, and we all struggle with it, and some of them are clearer than others. But one of the observations that's come out of the announcement of those finalists is come from Caroline Hill, who's at Legal IT Insider. Again, you want to read her comments on it. We'll put the notes up later. But she's made a couple of points in particular.
Yeah, she was actually one of the judges, I think, as part of this. So she was on the panel of.
She was on the panel that decided the finalists. That's right. And so the comments that Caroline made, were that a lot of them made a lot of good progress in explaining what they do by putting up a decent video of I don't know, it was their platform, but a video explanation, if you like, of what they're doing. It's a visual world now, isn't it? So.
Yeah, I mean, she was very keen in there to say that we've moved into much more social media platforms and YouTube and everything like that. Mm-hmm. That those that really shone had really nice, slickly produced videos just describing what they were doing themselves.
That's right.
Putting that out there.
Yeah.
And it's an area that I think is quite difficult to do. I mean, we've had enough trouble with some of our technical aspects on producing this podcast and stuff to start with. But I think in this modern age of all these social media platforms and stuff, you have to produce these videos, and you have to look good in these videos to get your message across and really stand out now.
That's not easy, is it? There are lots of providers out there will give you you won't struggle to find them if you're thinking of creating content and putting videos up. There's lots of people. You really won't struggle to find people who can do that sort of stuff for you. We're lucky we have our own in-house expert here on videos, which
we've got a very small team. There's only the two of us, but we tried to do it.
So for anyone who is at a startup that's trying to get their message across, then put videos up. That seems to be
looking for funding and things like that. I think it's look to produce a decent video. Look to do it out. Sometimes think outside the box as well, and make it interesting to the viewer and things like that. Really is an advantage to you now, I think.
Yeah, definitely. The second point, which Caroline mentioned, was to talk about competitor analysis, and that those companies, sometimes it's easy to dismiss the fact that there is competition out there and that there are other people doing what you're doing. It might not be exactly the same, but if you break down the legal tech world into its component parts, there are probably a limited number of solution types. So front up and acknowledge the fact that there are other people out there doing something similar, and that will hopefully help you identify what it is that's particularly special about you.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's very easy if you're starting a new product, if you're thinking you've got a great idea for something, for you to think that you're potentially the first person to think of this. And more often than not, you're probably not. There's probably someone else who's either done it before or is doing it now. That's just the way it goes. So it's what she's suggesting in there, and what is useful is that competition is not a bad thing.
That's right.
Even if there's someone already out there offering the same kind of product, the same kind of idea that you've had, it doesn't mean that you can't do it better than that. That a new startup doing something can't equally produce a good product, which gives the user something different as well.
Well, they say about warfare, don't they? The first one through the door is going to be the one that's gunned down. And if you're able to learn from what other people are doing and put a nuance on it and improve it, that's fantastic. And look at every other industry that there is, whether it's retail, supermarkets. Tesco was not the first retail supermarket on the block, but it's done tremendously well and it's outperformed everybody else. And in IT in particular, and Microsoft, Apple, all those companies, they were way behind IBM and have overtaken them. So,
it's a common thing everywhere, and the competition is good. It's what drives the marketplace, and you shouldn't be afraid to say, okay, even though my idea has been done by someone else, or something very similar. Yes, I can do it better than that, and I can bring something new to that area. Don't be afraid to think about that if you're a startup and or looking to invest in these kind of technologies. Don't necessarily discount startups who are doing something similar to what's already on there, especially if they're doing something similar to maybe one of the larger, more established products. Because often, and I know full well from working in a sort of an enterprise area where and working on big enterprise products and things, there is room for someone to do something better, and these larger companies often have so much legacy behind them. They're very slow to move, and they can't make radical changes to their products, whereas new startups can. Don't be afraid of that.
And the infrastructure on which the new companies and the startups are being built is predominantly, whether it's Amazon or whether it's Microsoft and their Azure platform and everything else they have, those companies and the people providing the infrastructure are always updating it, aren't they, and bringing out radically new and more powerful solutions. And so there will always be there will always be a lot of potentially increased foundation, if you like, from which you can build your service and platform.
I mean, we touched on it briefly last episode as well, when we were talking about people using cloud services and stuff. Not that long ago, if you wanted to create a brand new service as a subscription service or product, one of the first things you had to do was buy a data center and host all that yourself. Those days are long gone now. As an individual, as long as you're an individual and have a credit card, you can spin up as much computing resource as you can afford on these cloud platforms, on Amazon AWS, on Google's platform, on Microsoft's Azure platform. Those initial investment of hardware and infrastructure is no longer a boundary anymore. So you can dive straight into these things.
Good. So we like the competition, and we think it will continue to come. That leads us neatly into item 2, which is Allen and Overy, who have announced their Fuse 3 cohort. Again, the link to the relevant pages will be in the show notes. Starting in May 2019, 4 new companies to join their cohort. Do you want to take us through who they are, Pete?
Yeah, so we followed a couple of years. We've been looking at the new companies joining Allen and Overy, and I think I think they were at one of the Legal Geek conferences discussing.
They were Allen and Overy,
accelerators and things that we saw them talking about this kind of thing. They've announced a few others. I'll just take you through. There's API AX, which is a startup which builds tools aiming to create machine-readable rules, thus enabling customers to access complex financial regulations on a digital basis. There's Define, which is a drafting tool which helps users to access defined terms and references in the documents more easily, with the intention of speeding up the drafting process. Cicero, a legal AI platform that reads drafts and marks up legal agreements on an automated basis. And also, one of the ones I wanted to pick out on here, HiQ, which is a platform which seeks to provide social collaboration, secure file sharing, and project management with the aim of improving efficiency and productivity. And the reason I kind of wanted to highlight HiQ in that list is, I've seen a few reports recently. They've I think HelloFresh have just begun to use the HiQ platform for their collaboration and things. And I wanted to bring them up because it actually links into the sort of the third item on our news, which is the one we probably want to have a bit more of a discussion about.
We make it the topic of the week.
Which is legal departments and they're using software more to streamline projects with their outside counsel. Only because HiQ were also brought up in this article.
So there's an article which we found on law.com. It's authored by Dan Clark. Legal departments used software more to streamline projects with outside counsel. We'll read a couple of bits of that. Private law firms once led the charge in spurring the innovation of legal tech to provide better, to serve their clients better. However, the tide has changed, and now legal departments are finding new ways of using the technology. The conversation was largely centered around discussions with, I might pronounce this incorrectly, so apologies if I do, Mo Zain Ajaz, who's the General Counsel and Head of Legal of Operations at National Grid. And quote from him, "It's difficult when you have multiple firms. How do you manage technology for all of them? Do you get all of them on board, or do you work with your firms to segment out which uses which tech?" It's an interesting point, and if we just go back slightly to the Allen and Overy example of another round of cohort,
and even the hackathon as well,
and,
with lots
and,
of
and hackathon, and I can't remember how many there were in there, 10 or 12 or so.
Yeah.
Allen and Overy are on cohort number 3, and there were 4 companies in that. I don't know how many were in 1 and 2 offhand, but as we mentioned, I think in week 1, you start to build up a lot of different organizations and companies. Yep. Now, National Grid, and I'm sure everyone would like to work for National Grid. It's a massive, massive FTSE 100 listed company. I'm sure their legal spend is significant. It seems from what their head of legal is saying in the UK that they're not interested in lots of different solutions. They're interested in one, and in fact they want to take the lead on it. So I suppose the question is, what's actually the best outcome? Because the law firms several of the large and biggest law firms are going down one avenue, and we go back to the Legal Geek conference we went to. There was Mishcon de Reyes, CMS, Allen and Overy. There are lots of firms that are doing the incubator and
accelerators and things like that.
and they are taking a great deal of pride in, and rightly so, in bringing out great solutions that are better for their clients. And then on the other hand, and I'm sure it won't be only National Grid that are saying, well, actually, if we've got several law firms and you each present to us a similar solution and they're all run by different people, it's that same password issue and the same logging in and using multiple different solutions. Nobody seems to be interested in doing that. It's overload. And so the tide seems to be changing towards, let's go simpler, let's have fewer, and one place to go for all of our needs.
Yeah,
that seems to be what National Grid are saying.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting thing. We've kind of looked on it, and when we've been looking at other startups and other products that we've discussed in the past couple of episodes, we're generally focusing on what technology can do for the law firms themselves, looking at it from a law firm perspective, and then what, as a law firm, what can I provide to my clients to make their life easier. But I think what we have to understand in these situations is that in general, when you're acting for a firm or similar and your clients, these legal agreements and these legal processes are normally very collaborative. There's yourself, there's your client, and there's normally other parties involved. And if all of them have their own systems and are presenting their own sort of data warehouses and stuff, it makes the whole thing very difficult to manage.
It does.
Now it's a difficult problem to solve, because in the end, who pays for these solutions? And then are the individual firms comfortable with using other people's solutions to manage their own processes, their own internal processes? If they're not, and they're sharing that in that, okay, I will use this other firm's system, I will upload all the documents to there, but I've also got my own internal system which we do use as well, then you hit on all the issues, the same issues that you have with when people just email these documents around. The versioning, are you keeping the versioning of these documents up to date in multiple separate locations? But it is an interesting thing that actually, does this show a sign of the clients taking back that control and saying, if you're acting for us, you will use this platform, rather than a legal firm saying, here's a platform that you have to use as a client, and trying to lock the client into that.
It is interesting that National Grid, if we look at their business, they're obviously in an energy infrastructure business where they are distributing electricity and gas around the country. And so I suspect the majority of their business is, a large portion of their business is dealing with landowners through which their equipment goes. They may own the land themselves, but I imagine it's probably owned by third parties. And so they will have leases and easements that deal with the registration of their rights to put their piping in and whatever else they have there. So you were right when you hit on the point earlier. How does that look when you're actually dealing with the transaction? Because you have National Grid and you have whoever they're using. You have the landowner and whoever they're using. The information goes into the platform. Now, who's controlling the platform? It sounds from this article as though National Grid want to be in control of that. So they're going to be controlling their data and also the data of the landowner and everybody else. It feels quite messy. And I don't know what the answer is at the moment, but there's definitely a future in figuring out where the ownership of the platform lies, and should it be the lawyers and the client? Where is it best suited? And I suspect for someone like National Grid, they probably have lots of law firms on their panels and dealing with all different types of work. For them, it's bound to be easier to be in control of that platform. But it takes away the opportunity for the law firms to be able to sort of show willing. Now, we haven't talked about this before, but I wonder whether or not there's an opportunity for, National Grid are holding on to, and if they're using something like that HiQ, for example, they can store their documents in there, they can store contact details, they can store lots of things. I wonder if there's an opportunity for tech startups to say, actually, if I could partner with or communicate with and integrate with HiQ, I could offer microservices outside of the HiQ platform And that would be a really neat way of law firms saying, okay, National Grid, you hold on to the infrastructure, if you like, which is HiQ or whoever's platform.
Yeah.
We will build things around that will work better for you, and that will help us do the job faster and everything else.
Yeah, I mean, that's something we've talked on last week as well around sort of integration and stuff. It's I think it's realizing that as a startup or even an existing firm offering a solution, that you accept that you really need to have integration with other systems as a core part of your product offering, because if they're going down this route, if people are deciding that actually we're going to take back control of this data, and National Grid here, we don't care what systems you're using internally at your law firm, everything goes into this system, then those systems that a law firm has, you want that to be able to easily integrate with this sort of middleman bit of software, so that when you upload a new document to your own internal system, that is automatically pushed out to this other area. When new versions are put in, the versioning is pushed out, and all that kind of stuff, so that you get away from these silos of data which are not connected to each other, which go out of sync, and it allows you to still maintain your own internal practices, your own internal processes, but to also adapt and accommodate a client using their own system to store this stuff. That's an interesting point.
It feels like the National Grid, being an infrastructure type company, are going to grow their own infrastructure of platforms, the way they manage their own their own solutions and how that looks. That's difficult, and it raises a lot of opportunities for, as I say, the startups to build onto that and for law firms to build onto that. But what's interesting for me about that is that if they take control back of the platform, they will be the ones that are in control of their own data, right? And the data can be potentially valuable. And where you're in control of the platform and the data, that creates an element of lock-in, doesn't it, for firms or whoever's holding onto it and whoever's running it. If you can imagine a scenario where that platform that manages the transactions that's being used, all the information that's poured into that, it makes it very hard for, if you were the law firm controlling the information in that, and National Grid were using and relying on you completely, it would be very difficult for them to leave. That's a tremendously attractive proposition for any firm that can build an infrastructure like that. But that presumably is also very valuable for National Grid. At some point, they're going to say, well, we've got all this tremendous data. It's within our control. We can now run analytics on it. And that's where we got into the conversation about AI before in previous weeks. The AI platforms become much more valuable when the information and the data is in there. So I suppose it's a bit of a threat to the law firms, really, in that this control is being taken away from you. The future value of the platforms, if they are held centrally if the platforms are run centrally by the customer and the client, you're just not going to be able to provide the same service. You'll have to think differently about that. Yeah, definitely.
It's shifting the ownership of this information, which is a tricky thing, because, like you say, it's valuable to a law firm to provide the best solution and market that. That's part of their marketing. Look at our whizzy product. You can manage all of your data through our system, thus meaning that when that client wants to move somewhere else, they lose access to all of that. So it's definitely an appealing thing for the law firms, but I can see that the clients and the firms that are taking those services are going to say, actually, we want that managed elsewhere. We want a middle ground here, so that we are free to move on somewhere else and not lose access to all of this. If we are ultimately in control of our own destiny, we can swap you out as a law firm for someone else and still maintain our own internal processes exactly the same. It's a really interesting topic, and I wonder if there's a big a gap in the market for people providing these kind of middle ground solutions, which aren't just aimed at a individual law firm, but are
Yep.
aimed at their clients and things. And I think we've talked previously in this area. I think when we've spoken previously to Nick from Aperio, who Aperio we mentioned last week.
We did, yeah.
He had the same thing when he was initially pitching his
He did, yeah.
new software.
So
didn't
he was a lawyer himself, and I think he saw an opportunity, which was to say, on a number of occasions I've acted for certain clients, and we've scoped the work and we've gone over, and it was very difficult to maintain a clear picture on where the work was being done and why we've now gone over. And we talked about that a little bit last week, and we'll cover it in future shows in more detail, because it's a big, important area, big enough for him to want to build a platform around
Definitely, yeah.
So his approach, when we spoke to him for the first time, he said, well, I just had this idea and went to the client and said, would it be useful for you to be able to see the time that the firms are recording? Now, this client of his obviously said yes, and they were using more than just one firm. And I think very much it was having gotten that client on board with the concept of, displaying the time that's been recorded across all their files, and also telling you when the work is being done.
Yep.
He was then able to go back with this, proof of concept, if you like, to the firms and say, look at this, I've got this great idea. The customers want the visibility on the fees, and you really need to be delivering this.
Yeah.
And if you want to continue working for this particular client, that's a good way to go. And having done that and proven his concept, he can apply that now to any number of different clients. So I've got large legal spend, and I'm sure, I don't know whether National Grid have this product and use it or not, but maybe they will.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing that you're actually, turning things around. Whereas as a startup, you often think, okay, I'm producing something which is useful to these legal firms, rather than pitching to them. You're pitching your product to their client base and saying, you really need to get your firm to use this product. I mean, in the case of Aperio, it's a similar situation. It's slightly different in that, the legal firm is still the people buying that software and offering it to the client. It's whether there's that middle ground of it's a difficult thing to say who is buying this software. I mean, in the discussions we've had with some of the things that we've been looking at, and you're talking to the various parties involved, they're all saying, okay, we want a single platform where everything can be managed out of, but who is the person who buys that platform? If for a smaller client, they wouldn't be able to afford to invest in something for their legal firms to use, and if a legal firm is investing in this product, they're going to want that to be the product that is used and not have to use something else at each place. So although it seems like an area in the market which is slightly untapped but is an important area, it's also a very difficult area to decide who is actually the person who's going to invest in this, which side of the deal is going to invest in the solution.
It's very difficult because you're absolutely right, no one wants to front the money up for it, and software solutions don't come cheap. So there's a lot of expertise needed and a lot of time needed to build something from scratch, which is what's been done in their case. And so, who's going to pay for that? And I think if you look at the website, the suggestion is that his customers, are the law firms first, and then the clients of those law firms. So I guess that is the ultimate customer, because if the law firms turn around and say, actually, our clients don't care about this, then there isn't much point in them doing it other than their own internal competitiveness within the market. So it's a hard one to dictate where that money comes from and what the driver is for it. I like the idea, though, and I think it's probably the right place to look at what the ultimate client and ultimate customer wants, which I suppose you could take that to the nth degree and say, well, National Grid's customers are people like, electricity produced, E.ON, EDF, or the consumers, the individuals. But it's taking it too far. I think, looking at, if you're trying to sell a product to a law firm and saying, why are they going to want to buy this? If it's to provide a better service to their customer, and that customer actually can see the benefit of it directly, you're much more likely to get investment and approval, if you like, of your concept than if you can't sell it directly to that customer.
Yeah, and to take it back to where we kind of started as well, it is when you're looking at new solutions for, new legal tech solutions yourself. Maybe you've got something which is aimed at the lawyer, at the legal firm solely. It's to take into account that actually your product is probably not the only product going to be used in that chain.
Yeah,
there's going to be lots of other pieces of software in there. The whole, as much and as brilliant as your software package may be, if it's used internally at a firm and that firm's client has dictated that something else has to be used, it's factoring in right at the outset when you're designing your product or when you're looking at changes to make to your product now, to say, okay, we will make it so that we can talk to other solutions easily. Because I think that's a key thing. If you can integrate easily with other systems, push your data out, not be afraid of, okay, everything has to be stored in our product. That's how we keep in at these places. Actually say, no, we will be open. We've got a great product here, and it can talk to everything else. It can take data in, and it can send it out. That puts you in a much better position. Yeah. When something like this happens, when the client comes and says, actually, we want you to use our platform to manage this process, you can actually you can go back to that client and say, that's not a problem as long as that platform can integrate with ours. Yeah. Then it's easy.
We've seen it firsthand, you and I, the importance of that, and the removal of the friction points when we've spoken to Seed Camp about their investment policy before, and they mentioned to us about integration with other platforms, and obviously they've been and funded companies before, and I think Aperio is one of them. Yep. How are you going to integrate with that product, and are you going to be treading on their toes in any way or not? So when people are out there thinking about providing their solutions and how they're going to pitch it, particularly if they're looking for money from someone like a Seed Camp, it's absolutely critical to be able to say, we've looked at who you're already working with, we know exactly what they do, we know the type of information that they are collecting and where they're collecting it from, this is what we're going to be doing, and this is how we're going to integrate with it. It's going to be one of the major questions, and whether it's them or somebody else, whether the funding's coming from an external venture capital seed funder or a law firm through one of the incubation things, you are going to have to know what they've got on their platforms, or they've got on their table already, what they've got in terms of solutions, and what they're already looking at. It goes back to the point we made earlier about the competitiveness. You have to be very thorough about what's out there and who's using what for what and how.
I mean, from my own experience from working in sort of enterprise software and things, I would say a huge portion of my job in the sort of the custom and development area was integrating with other systems, because nothing sits independently somewhere. Everyone uses so many different products to manage all their solutions, and quite often we've looked at previously, a lot of new startups and things like that. They're looking at producing the sort of the minimum viable product. Yeah. We've found an issue and we're going to solve that problem. Yeah. But that is just one problem that these firms face. Yeah. So they're going to have solutions for all these other problems that they have. So it's key to say, I understand that I'm only fixing one of these issues, and I need to be able to talk to everything else that firm is using. Yeah. And now, in addition, not only worrying about what the firm is using internally, but also what that firm's clients are using. So yeah, I don't think there's any easy answers here, but
there isn't an easy answer. But I think it's important, and if you see it firsthand here, a large customer of their panels, their law firm panels will all be big. I'm sure they will have some smaller ones that deal with routine day-to-day matters, but the big and complicated stuff will be large firms on the panel.
Yeah.
The panel will be probably quite big, but they're the controller. So if anyone is out there is thinking about how you market your product, I would suggest you don't limit your conversations only to the law firms. You go out and talk to the customers of the firms and find out what they say. Talk to them firsthand and see what they're looking for from their law firms, because they're all getting much more switched on to it now.
It's an interesting topic, and to kind of bring it on as well, I wanted to talk about some an event up and coming, and it kind of fits nicely into this conversation as well, and conversations we've previously had. Microsoft are actually holding their Microsoft Build event, which is May 6th and 8th it's in Seattle at the Washington State Convention Center. If you can't make it there, which is probably likely for a lot of the people over here, the whole thing is streamed live on Microsoft's own Channel 9 site, so you can watch the keynotes and things as they happen. And the reason I wanted to bring that up here is a lot of startups now, and we were talking last week about looking at who you're buying from, whether you're getting cloud solutions and things. Microsoft are the people who are providing the infrastructure and the platform that all these new startups and things are building their solutions on. And Microsoft know well this area of needing to integrate with other systems and needing to provide those tools to be able to do that. And that's the kind of things they're going to be talking about. The Build is a primarily a developers conference. It's designed for programmers and developers and designers to go to find out what new software is available, what new tools are available. But I think from anyone who's got an interest in legal tech, it's an interesting thing to watch, because they will be talking about things like their AI services that are now part of Azure, things like their integration services. They've got messaging hubs which can do all this kind of integration we've just been talking about, can enable that. And I think it strips away some of the magic that you can sometimes be blinded with. If you're looking to invest in legal technology, if you're a law firm and you're thinking, well, crikey, this new startup is talking about their whizzy new AI solution, this new company has got a new chat bot or something like that. I don't understand how all that works. Microsoft will be discussing this. They have the tools to allow people to build these, and what you can often see is this stuff's a lot simpler than it appears to be.
I thought you wanted to mention it because you were after a free ticket to Seattle from Microsoft.
Well, the free advertising here I'm giving them, I think it's worth a free ticket to get there, to be honest.
I know I want to go to Seattle and go back to it's a great place to go, but we will expect our invitation in the post.
I would hope so. I think they
expect it by email now.
I think they've got enough resources to be able to afford to get us over there.
No, you're right. I mean, that Microsoft, they've got such a massive array of different features and functions, and the obvious ones are Word and Excel, and those things all integrate with each other. But there's
those are what the users see on a day-to-day basis, really.
Of course. So most firms and most solutions are going to have Microsoft in mind when they're building whatever it is they're building, or they should do. And you're right, the chatbots and the Cortana and all the features that they have, and Flow, and they got loads of different solutions that most people don't use. They probably don't even know they're available. You'll probably find out quite a lot of stuff from listening to that you didn't know was available, and you can build on it. Like you say, the chatbot, I think some people, let's go back to the AI discussion before, but they'll probably think this is artificial intelligence, and it isn't really. It's fairly basic, and question answer. You program the bot, don't you, to say if the question typed in is this, then provide this answer. I mean, that's ultimately what it is. That's what it's doing.
Yeah, and indeed, the chatbot frameworks that people like Microsoft offer, the Azure Cognitive Services, they've got services which will take input from someone, read it, and tell you what that refers to. So when you think of something like Siri and Cortana answering your questions, if you were a startup looking to build something like that, you don't have to build that tech in the background. Those are already supplied. And I know other enterprise systems who are using these Microsoft tools. So they'll come out and say, here's our whizzy new chatbot. And they're using the exact tools that you could use yourselves. I mean, if you were a large law firm who wanted to introduce your own chatbot, it's well within your capabilities to do that using these off-the-shelf tools that these people are providing. So it's just,
I think those sorts of tools will be really useful if there are any people who are watching or listening who are the slightly more tech savvy people at the firms, and particularly maybe look at something like pricing. And we talked about pricing last week and the SRA requirements to be transparent on it. It's not that difficult to build a front end program that sits on your website and asks the customer to fill in questions for you. This is a great way of eliminating a lot of admin time. If somebody wants to come to you and say, I've got a flat to sell and the price is X, most firms are going to have a fixed price for that sort of thing. But somebody ringing you up and saying, I have a property to sell, and they don't really give you any information, you can't really give a price without knowing a bit more about it. So is it freehold or leasehold or common hold, which is making a comeback that nobody knows anything about? Or are there what parameters are there? The price might be one thing. How fast does the transaction have to go might be another. The value will be another, and your price, the price paid for a property will impact on the fee charged, because there's inevitable risk involved if you get it wrong. So, but all of that stuff could be built into a chatbot feature, and it would look very slick on somebody's website. Just being able to do that and then get your price back straight away. Now that is good for two reasons. It's fast because it's done straight away, but also it does eliminate a lot of the admin time that would otherwise be spent charting through some tables that might otherwise sit in Excel. Yeah,
exactly. Well, Excel, the tool that everyone uses for everything they can do. And another Microsoft product. But I mean, it's. I urge you. I mean, some of the aspect. I think I've made you watch some of the keynotes in previous years and stuff like that. Some of the bits people aren't going to understand. But if you are interested in this kind of technology, then I do urge you to check these live streams, watch at least the keynotes and things like that, because they do such a huge range of things. I mean, they have Microsoft provide an Azure blockchain solution, which is built on, I think it's built on Ethereum, the Ethereum blockchain, which enables things like smart contracts and stuff like that. That's all available for Azure. You can build a solution on top of that. So it's basically saying that these things aren't as scary as you think. They're not as complex as you think. These big organizations like Amazon, like Microsoft, are building the tools to enable you to use them. Then sure, you're still going to need some coding knowledge here, but it's not beyond the capabilities, especially for larger law firms, to look at integrating some of this stuff in their internal systems. It's a really interesting thing. As I say, it'll be May 6th to the 8th. So have a look for the streams and check out the keynotes and things there.
Yeah, definitely, absolutely.
So
we'll wrap it up there, I think.
I think so. Yeah, we've been aiming to get ourselves down to sort of 45 minutes or so. That's the ideal length for the podcast.
We're pretty close. Yeah,
I think we're there. So. We're going to wrap it up. Again, we just wanted to mention, if you want to get in contact with us, you can email us first at panachecast@panachesoftware.com.
Yep. And check out all the various social media platforms. So we'll post everything on that.
Posting on, and if you want to support what we're doing here, so that we can keep producing this stuff for and getting it out onto these platforms for free and stuff. check out our Patreon at patreon.com/Panache Software. And look out for we're planning, or hopefully looking to produce a few more shows and sort of keep this one on a weekly basis, but also intersperse with some additional shows.
That's right. Yep.
Where we look at some potential training things and have other deeper discussions into some specific topics.
Yeah, definitely.
And get those out to you as well.
Yeah, absolutely. We have a few guests coming up, so look out for those.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's and again, we really want to hear from you as well. If you want to get in contact and let us know, what you want to hear about. If there's anything again that we've discussed that you don't agree with, you do agree with, just let us know your thoughts, and we'll share them out as well.
Absolutely. Yeah,
that's great.
So I'll see you next week.
So till next week, we'll see you again.
Thanks.
Thanks then.
Bye.
Bye.